Hey, welcome to the channel. Got lots to do on the Highboy project today. I'm going to gather up a lot of parts that need sandblasted and get them all cleaned up and do some painting and hopefully install the accessory drive on the Highboy engine today. Stay tuned. So this is the original rusty cab. It fell victim to the Midwestern salty roads. You can see how much work this would be to save it. Um, Bottom of the door is trashed, cab corners trashed, floors are trashed. Really wasn't in that bad a shape other than the rust. But I'm going to get some parts out of here. Kind of use it for storage. Got a few of the pieces. Let's find what we need to sandblast and clean up. So we had a friend graciously enough allow us to use his sandblasting cabinet. So we're going to head over with the parts and get them cleaned up and get some paint on them. Well, a whole bunch of sandblasting later and some priming and painting. We've got parts hanging up to dry in the parts tree. About all I've got to really hang stuff from out here. But unfortunately, it's a little bit of a chilly day in southern New Mexico. So paint's going to take a little longer than expected to dry. We're hanging parts anywhere we can. So for the initial engine run, we had to rob a timing pointer off of another engine, and it wasn't painted the same color. So we got it all painted and primed, and looks really nice. So we'll go ahead and install this. You can see we got an alignment dowel where the center hole aligns with to make sure it's in the right spot. There we go. And then we got two of these screws with studs on them. And just for good measures, I'll put a little bit of NICs on there. Don't have to do this, but I kind of like to. And start the top one, and then NICs this bottom one a little bit. And we'll start the bottom one. That'll cover this up when we start putting all the accessory drive stuff on there, so we want to make sure we get any painting on the underside done now, so we don't wish we did later. Beautiful. So one of the other pieces that we cleaned up was these little spark plug shields. It requires that we take this bolt back out as well as this bolt, and we can install these. Got it all painted up nice and silver. Set it in there just like that, and put our bolts back in. we can get them to line up. There we go. Then we'll do the same thing on the other side. We'll snug these back up nice and tight. Oops. There we are. And we'll do the same thing on this side. It requires us to take out this bolt and this bolt. Of course, we got to pull our spark plug wires out of the way for this procedure. And there we are. A second accessory we have to add to this passenger side is these two heat shields. And these two heat shields, what they do, they direct warm air up through this little tube and then through a perforated tube up to the carburetor to run the automatic choke when it was ran off the a little of a thermostatic type of choke. Now that won't apply to our end product, but since I've got these good pieces and they're not rusty, they're still intact, I want to put them on the engine just for nostalgic purposes. So in order to do this, we have to take out this bolt and replace them with studs. So we'll go ahead and take these two bolts out. I've gotten the studs ready, put some anti-seize on the end of them, and we'll get them taken off. I'm leaving the spark plugs loose, or spark plug wires loose, because I'm going to end up swapping them out for different ones later anyhow. We'll take our new ones, start them in. And there we have it. So we'll go ahead and take this piece, the inner portion, and lay it up underneath there where it belongs. Sits in there just like that. And then the larger piece goes in over it. And this is just a duct to direct warm air out this little tube right here for the choke thermostat. It sits on there just like that. Now, you've got a couple of these cheap stamped sheet metal screws, bolts, or nuts that go on there. And we'll go ahead and try to start those. I imagine most normal people probably wouldn't put this piece back on, but I'm gonna do it because I'm going for mostly originality on this truck. There we go. You can kind of see this one over here a little better. I hold the camera different. There we go. And there we go. So when I was putting everything together, I realized that the power steering pump had a bunch of moisture in the reservoir from sitting outside. So I decided to purchase a rebuilt power steering pump in case there was moisture or rust or any kind of damage inside of it. And I decided to purchase a rebuilt one, and the reason I went that direction was because a lot of the new ones aren't identical to the old ones, and what I mean by that is they can't necessarily be rebuilt. New parts for the old pumps don't fit the new pumps. And the same thing goes for alternators, water pumps, so on and so forth. So I try to get rebuilt stuff or send stuff off to have it rebuilt because I know I'm getting original design and everything will fit, and I can rebuild it at a later date. So I decided to get the one without the reservoir. My reservoir was in pretty good shape. It does take a little bit of extra effort to swap out the reservoir. No big deal. It does take a special tool to remove the pulley. We've already done that. You can rent those tools from AutoZone or O'Reilly's or whatever, or you can buy one off the Snap-on truck, the high dollar ones that are really nice. Thankfully that's the kind I have. But they're not difficult to take apart, but what happens is this O-ring seal right here seals against this inner lip here, and when you take the bolts off this stud on the back side, you can tap the back side of this housing and eventually it'll move backwards and come off. Now of course I've taken this one off, sandblasted it, cleaned it, repainted it and all that, but unfortunately you can kind of see, I don't know if the camera picks it up, but some of the little dents from trying to remove it. It was a little bit stubborn, but not real noticeable, and it's not bad enough to cause any issues with it. So what we're going to do is go ahead and install this back into the original reservoir, and it comes with some extra O-rings and a little bushing. None of that stuff we'll need for our application. There are other applications where there's extra fittings on the back of here that take O-rings, and not for this truck. So first thing we want to do is lubricate this O-ring. Now you can use power steering fluid and work it all around there on this O-ring to lubricate it. I prefer to use Vaseline or petroleum jelly. It sticks a little bit better to the O-rings. There you can see it there, and we'll just go all the way around with the Vaseline, lube that O-ring. Okay, now between the petroleum jelly and the power steering fluid, we've lubricated the O-ring very well. And don't forget this one on the back side here. Get that nice and lubed up with some Vaseline or power steering fluid or whatever you got. Make sure that this is a little cover for shipping, has been removed. You don't want that in there. So we'll hold this up like this, and then we'll go ahead and set that on there like that. So we've got everything lined up. This thing sits, this bolt is the highest point on the bracket, so we're going to put the spout just off from that just a little bit. And once we've got it where we want it, Now some of them do have lines that you line up, but this particular one doesn't. So we've got this lubed up, the O-ring, on the back side. This is through. So all we need to do is tap this and work it down over that O-ring. Now it should come almost to the end of this flange when we're done. So we've got a small, pretty clean dead blow hammer. So we'll go ahead and tap this thing, and hopefully we won't have to do any paint touch-up. So I've got it started. I'm going to go ahead and put the narrower of the two nuts on the back stud and run them down. Just finger tight at this point. Do some more tapping. You can see that prevents it from bouncing back off. I think we're about there. Yep. And you can see we're just sticking out the O-rings back down about here and sealing, and we'll go ahead and tighten this nut up. Okay. And we're done with this portion. Now we got to put it in the actual bracket, put the other nut on it, install the pulley, but we won't do that until it's in the truck, because if you put the pulley on now, you won't have access to these bolt holes. The power steering pump mounts inside this bracket, and it only fits one way because the spacing between these three holes is different, this hole being the top. So we'll set it down over the pump and get it bolted on. Just like that. And there's 3/8 bolts that go through the front. We'll get those in there. Okay, and then we'll tighten those up. But on the back side, you'll see this is where we install this last thin nut. This holds the back of the bracket to that center tube stud. Then we'll tighten it all up, and we'll have the first part of the power steering bracket assembled.